Hello everyone, my name is Roya and today I will be telling you what I read in the second half of September. So this was a really good half of the reading month. I think I gave everything 4 or 5 stars. First, before I get to the books, I'm also really quickly going to announce the giveaway winner of my 700 subscriber giveaway where you guys helped me pick my TBR. I never actually mentioned in that video that it is to celebrate 700 subscribers. Anyway, I'm really dumb and just didn't tell you guys to leave like an email address or anything to contact you at. So the winner is Jen's Bookshelf. So you can contact me at the email address below or the Twitter below or the Instagram below, whatever suits you. And also I didn't actually get to most of those books that you guys helped me pick out. I did meet those challenges still with other books, but somehow I just didn't end up getting to all of those books for some reason. So this next month I might. So anyway, the first book that I read in the second half of September is Winter's Heart by Robert Jordan. This was, of course, for the Watt Along Read Along that I'm hosting with Jade from Bedtime Bookworm. This is the 9th book of the Wheel of Time series, and the previous one was kind of a slog. It was probably like the slowest one out of the whole series, and I was expecting this one to be as well because a lot of people kind of told me that this one's also just like that one, but it wasn't. It was actually much better. There were definitely a lot of scenes that kind of made me laugh or made me go, what the heck is going on here, and all that stuff. So I do feel like the series is already picking back up again since the previous book was kind of a downhill, a ways downhill, I guess. But anyway, so there were some very interesting parts of this book, including this part where a dude decides to get engaged to 3 different people, and they're all totally cool with it, all of that stuff. So anyway, by the time this video goes up, we would probably have already had our live show, which will be on my channel, so you can definitely check that out for further thoughts, but it will be spoilery, so only go and watch it if you have read the books. The next book that I read is The Sisters of the Winter Wood by Rena Rossner, and this was an arc that I got at BEA, and it just came out on September 25th. So this is about 2 sisters in the Ukraine, I believe. And one of them is a swan, like their mother, and the other one is a bear, like their father. And literally they can transform into these animals, and the older one, who is the bear, is in love with this normal dude who doesn't transform into an animal or anything, and he doesn't know that she's a bear, and she's like, oh no, he's a nice normal dude, blah-de-blah. And the younger sister gets infatuated with like some other dude, who's also like magical and whatnot, but he's evil, and her sister tries to like warn her away from him, but she just doesn't listen. And it's just really an interesting story about family, and also the main characters are Jewish. That made things really interesting as well. There is a lot of Yiddish dialogue in this. It's very interesting. So anyway, I really enjoyed this book. I thought the first 150 pages were a little bit slow. It took a little while to get there, but ultimately I ended up really enjoying this book. Next, I read Cat Daddy by Jackson Galaxy, and this was my audiobook of the month. So this is a memoir from Jackson Galaxy, who, if you don't know, is a famous cat behaviorist. He has his own show called My Cat from Hell, and this is basically his memoir about going from being a drug addict and like a starving musician who's just trying to get by and just wanting like the most autopilot job possible, just so that he can just think of songs all day and not actually have to do any work, all that stuff. And he ends up working in an animal shelter and actually finds his true calling, and then he adopts a cat, and then he adopts another cat, and all that stuff, and he gets really involved in cats, and he ends up with this cat who was abandoned by its person, like dropped off at the shelter, and because his person was, like, didn't really want him anymore anyway, but he had just been hit by a car, and she was just, I don't know, weird and just couldn't afford it and just didn't care enough, basically. And so he ends up adopting this cat, and it ends up being his best friend who basically changes his life. And it's such a fascinating story in so many ways. I actually cried at the end. And the thing is that also Jackson Galaxy does narrate the audiobook himself, and I swear to God he's crying at the end too. So there are some very sad moments of this book and also some very informative moments about cats. And so if you like cats, you really should read this book. And if you don't like cats, what is wrong with you? Read this book and you will like cats. You will be cured of your dislike of cats. So... And then also it goes into a lot of really fascinating facts about, like, because obviously, for example, when a shelter gets a hold of a pregnant dog or cat or whatever, they spay it and terminate the pregnancy for obvious reasons. And they can still do that even up to, like, you know, even if it's giving birth the next day or something like that, they can still terminate the pregnancy. And there is a part in this book that describes how that is done, and it made me so sad. Like, you guys, spay and neuter your animals, just saying. But anyway, this book is so fascinating, so good. It was my 5-star read of this month. All the other ones were 4 stars, but yeah, it is incredible, and I definitely recommend reading it. Even if you're not familiar with Jackson Galaxy and his work at all, like, I do recommend this book. I think it has so much to offer. Next, I read Light Years by Cass Morgan, who is the author of The 100, and I've never read The 100. I just saw like one episode of the show one time for no reason. So I wasn't expecting this to be as good of a read as it was. I thought, you know, I was interested in it because it's sci-fi. I didn't really think about, you know, I didn't think I'd get that invested into the story, but it actually is very, very brilliant. So it's about these 4 kids in a military academy who are all very different from each other. They all have different reasons for being there. One of them is actually an imposter, and she's trying to jeopardize the entire school and put everyone in danger and get them, like, to be invaded and whatnot. One of them is also an imposter, but he's not a dangerous one. He just stole his brother's identity in order to be there. So he has to, like, hope that nobody finds out that he's not really who he says he is. So I should add that one of these characters is queer, and he does end up in a relationship with another dude, and it's not treated as anything weird at all. I mean, their love is still forbidden, but it's because they're from different, like, social classes, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they're 2 men at all. So I thought that was beautifully done. And just... there is a lot of very interesting political tension and a lot of just everything. Like, the conflict really kept coming, and I really enjoyed this book. Next, we have Damsel by Alana K. Arnold. This was sent to me for review by Megan Beattie, who is a book publicist. So I do have a full review up of this now. So this is about it's a twist on your story of, like, dude saves girl from dragon, marries girl, lives happily ever after, except really he's an asshole, and the girl has no memories from before she was saved from the dragon, and so she doesn't really know what is going on or who she is or anything. And when she gets to the palace, she figures out pretty quickly that everyone knows stuff that she doesn't about where she came from, and she has no idea who she is. Like, literally, he gave her a name. Like, she doesn't even have a name. I really liked this book because it really kept you guessing, and even though I knew what was going on right from the beginning, there's the why and the how of things. Like, there are a lot of questions that I just kept reading to find out. I was pretty bummed because we didn't get to see all of the answers to those questions. Not all of them got answered, and I do believe this is a standalone, so there won't be a sequel that tells us that, but I did think this book had a lot of really creative aspects, and we do get the answers to some of those questions as well. But the thing is, too, that this should not have been marketed as YA. It is very much an adult book, and I liked that aspect of it. I thought that was great, but I think a lot of people who are exclusively YA readers and aren't used to adult fantasy necessarily are probably going to pick this up thinking that it's totally YA, but it's completely not. Like, I don't think it should have been marketed as YA at all. So if you want to be better informed and want to hear some more about this book, you can certainly check out my review. I do recommend, if you're thinking of picking up this book, if it sounds interesting to you, that you watch that review. I do have half of the review being like a non-spoilery part, and then half of it being full of spoilers for anyone who just wants to know more, because I really did have a lot to say about this book. So just go ahead and check out the review. And finally, we have Wildcat by J.P. Harker. I may or may not already have a full review up of this as well. This was sent to me by the author in exchange for an honest review, and I really did enjoy this book. It took a few chapters to really get there for me, but once I got to about page 150, the conflict just kept on coming, and So this is about basically the Celts and the Romans, sort of, except they're not called that. I mean, this is basically kind of a fantasy version of all of that, but it very much is, that's what it is. So it follows this one girl who is a kind of Celtic warrior, and she is getting married to the love of her life, and then everything just comes crumbling down. Of course, she gets captured, and then she's not sure what side she's on, etc., etc. There's a lot that goes on in this. It's really hard to describe. This is a really long book. It's 550 pages, and they're like long, big pages too. It's not just like paperback pages. So this is quite a long book. I think that some of the conflict. So I did feel like there was a lot of conflict that happened that was a little bit underdeveloped, and that that didn't completely contribute to the story in any particular way. Especially there is this like old suitor of hers who shows up, who like she didn't want to marry just because, I mean, he's not a bad guy. She just didn't like him. She just didn't think that she could be in love with him or anything like that. And he shows back up when she gets married, and he's like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's obvious that he's bummed that he's not marrying her. When I thought that if he were a complete jerk, like, it could have contributed to the book a lot more. But I thought, for example, that was very underdeveloped. The fact that he's a perfectly nice guy, but like there's still this conflict with him, just kind of weakened the story a little bit. And then past like the about page 150 or so, he never shows up again. So it's kind of like he's even mentioned in the summary, but he didn't contribute to the story at all. And there's some conflict that happened with him that made no sense and seemed very out of character, and you never find out exactly what it is that happened. So I thought that was kind of weird. So certain parts of the story I thought could have been improved upon, but overall I really liked this book, and there were so many times when I just could not put it down. These are the books that I read in the second half of September, and if you've read any of these books, let me know what your thoughts are, and I will see you soon with a new video. Bye!